Hi, everybody. All right, so I guess this is going to be a part 5. I kind of feel like it's part 4 because it's only a couple minutes after I recorded the other ones, but we're getting some traction. All right, so we talked about nutrition just a little bit and how it is I got exposed to the idea that this might be a thing to look at, and turns out it was a really good idea. We took, again, my boy to Susan Blanc at Kitchen Table Remedies. Look it up. She's amazing. Truly. Anyway, yeah, so, what we learned is he was suffering from candida overgrowth. Candida is a yeast that lives in everybody, I believe. And when it gets out of control, it wreaks havoc on the body. Now, at one point, I talked about difficulties, many times difficulties, but I talked about difficulties when he pooped, and it was like wood chips and sand. The sand was candida yeast, and the wood chips were his intestinal walls shedding, and that's what it was. The nutritionist took his, samples and learned that, and we learned that the host environment for candida, for it to get out of control, needs to be a certain kind of environment, be it the body needs to be in a certain state to allow the candida to get all around. And we had evidence that it was everywhere. And everything that he was going through, a lot of what he was going through, anyway, was because of that. Now, I am, again, getting a little ahead of myself because we didn't know all of that at the time, but we knew at that point he had candida, basically overgrowth and poisoning. And, that's the thing that we got to deal with. And, gosh, we learned so much, again, through the exploration of nutrition. And one of the things that was prescribed to us, now I like to use the word prescription, and you might think we went to the pharmacy, went to the grocery store. And when we were told, first of all, we went to the supplement store and got all these, biotin and, Pal-Darco, okra pepsin, and all kinds of super duper crazy magnesium stearate. God knows, so many things. We just, bam. We were like, every day he had supplements because it was part of, his thing. The chelation that we had mentioned, this strip in the body. But, get a little into the weeds here. The idea is we got traction. And the idea that a nutritionist could see, like, she gave us 2 charts, like, this is where your boy should be on this chart, and this is where your boy is, and there was a lot of things to get lined up, as far as mineral content, like what's really going on in his body, the constituent minerals in his body, how is he doing? That's what this was. I think it's called an OATS test, OATES, maybe something like that. Look it up, it's real great. So yeah, so through that test we learned about that, and now we start reacting. And this is when things were the hottest, because he was the messiest. He said, self-injury for him. He would also punch himself in the head really hard, bang, bang, bang. He would punch himself in the top of the hands with his knuckles, and if you've ever hit your hand on the doorknob, woo! So we knew he was not going through what we were going through. He said, that's what he's into. Nobody's into that. Oof. Anyway. So these were, and this is every day. This is all the time. This is just never stops. In the way that he might play with a toy and all that, but he doesn't play like most kids. He would gather things up and just throw them up in the air. Go gather them up, throw them up in the air. Hey, at least he's playing. At least he's doing something. Give him some time, in the living room while we could do everything else that parents do, right? So but again, back with the food, we had to get away from processed foods. That was clear. But unfortunately, a lot of what a complicated time. We needed to get away from things like Hot Pockets and things that were just, full of sodium and things that we didn't really need because, it's no good. And, we needed to get certain things in Sean's diet for him to, be better off. So that's what we did. And that was really hard because we'd never done that before. Like, let me tell you, my first time I went to the grocery store. Now, by the way, my budget did not expand at the time. So if anybody's ever bought organic food and things without all the additives and all that, there's a lot of money that comes in with that. Like, we used to cost $2, now cost $6. Whatever cost $4 now costs $12. You're about like a gluten-free pizza in the store. Even if they're worth eating, it's still expensive. So anyway, so we're learning about stuff. And so I remember going to the store. This is one of my fond memories, actually. I remember having the same budget. I think I had about $60 to buy, enough food for, four of us for like 4 or 5 days or whatever. And I knew that I couldn't buy the normal stuff. Now we're buying cereal of different kinds. I know, don't. But now we're buying different kinds of cereal, and now we're buying this without this stuff, and da 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 da. And we're like, okay, right? So we knew that we had to get away from fried food because that was a yeast feeder, and we knew we couldn't give them potato chips and things like that because these were yeast feeders. We had to stay from yeast feeders, and we had a list of stuff, from Susan that says no, and no means no, right? Cool. So there I am walking through, and the deal, the formula was, I can't make changes overnight like this. I got everything else going on. I am not equipped to be anything but what I am. So, but the deal is, for every 2 items that I buy normal, like whatever, I must buy 1 fresh food item. That was not hard to wrap my mind around. And I came up with that. Now that's a big deal, but it's like, how do I do this? Well, shit, I'm just gonna shop like I normally shop, and everything for a 3rd item, it has to be a fresh food item. It can be whatever I want, but it must be recognizable. If it was 100 years ago, if it was an apple or a steak, it's still an apple or a steak. Great. So I went to the produce department and I grabbed steak because that's like the easiest thing. It's like, okay, now all of a sudden, right, I'm getting a steak instead of something else. Steak ain't cheap. Right. But there it is, and my wife liked the steak, so, it was going to happen there. So, okay, great. So that was that, but now I'm a couple things down the road, and I need to get, like, something to complement the steak, So I remember looking up in, like, the produce area, and I'm like, what's that? Well, that was a parsnip. But it looked like a carrot, and I'm trying to do something new and, like, branch out. So, about the parsnip. Thinking, hey, looks like a carrot. How far off from a carrot can it be? It's not very far off from a carrot. It doesn't taste like a carrot. But it's, it's a root. So I felt good about that. I remember saying, wow, I'm just going to figure out what I do with this thing. And the plan was to saute it, right? I mean, can't really fry everything anymore. Gonna tell you a little story about that in a minute. But, my plan was to, like, just like oil, olive oil and salt, saute it. I mean, just about anything could be sauteed and it'd be good, right? Because when we first learned about the diet, we're like, we need to change his diet and get him off of processed food. We actually bought, like, some flour. I know it's processed, whatever. We bought flour, and we would, like, make little pretzels and fry them. But he would eat them. And that was the breakthrough, see. Even though we were kind of, like, breaking the protocol, we just made something in the kitchen that he ate. Which means he sees us providing the food, watching, smelling, and doing the whole thing, and then putting it on his plate. Basically, little fried pretzels. That's part of getting into his world. Right? Like I've said before, to be successful with these people, you must get into their world, gain their trust, and then slowly reel them into your world. So that's how I did it. That's how we got started. That was the punch. Actually, those fried pretzels. But we learned, can't fry it no more. So, okay, so what do you do? So now we're going for this new shopping thing where I had the same budget. Now I have to buy fresh food items. Every 3rd item must be a fresh food item. That was not a mistake. That was great. Because that's how the pattern started. And we found there was a lot more to learn. But got to get started somewhere. And that was where we got started. We got started by selecting every 3rd item at the grocery store to be a fresh food item. And it could be whatever we wanted. There was no limit there. Especially when you don't know what you're doing. Why limit it? So, shopping, it was a challenge because, kind of broke, and a struggling family. Not struggling, but a family trying to come up. I mean, unless you're loaded with money, man, you're trying to make it. So, so we got this new kind of way of spending money at the store. Now we had to spend time in the kitchen. And life wasn't really budgeted for that, but we were committed. So we learned to cook. And of course, there's like spaghetti, meatballs, and things like that. And, most people eat that. But Sean wouldn't eat a lot of what we ate, and a lot of what we ate, Sean couldn't eat. because we had a list of food that Sean should not eat. They are yeast feeders, they're this and that, they're not good for him, period. So, we had like basically what we call dinner A and dinner B. And that was hard because, you get basically cooking for him first, and then you cook in regular dinner, and then you cook for him next because dude's hungry. We don't know what we're doing anyway. We had dinner A and dinner B, and so that's like double the effort to some degree, but it's the same amount of food. But you gotta like, and we learned about all kinds of stuff. So we're about cross contamination. So just think keeping kosher. If you don't know what that is, you just don't mix your meat and your your meat and your milk and things like that on the same plates and such like that. It's very similar. We were very concerned. We learned a lot about, like I said, with his nutrition, that celiac disease. We looked at what he was going through, and there's a lot of hallmarks of celiac for his digestion issues. So we're like, hey, let's treat this like if you have celiac. Let's start again. You got to get a foothold somewhere. So we couldn't find all of our symptoms in one spot. So we had to take like all the symptoms and make a protocol for him, based on him. And who else is going to know him but us, right? So, right. So everything's adaptive, and you'll be adapting for yourself and your own. But this is it. So dinner A, dinner B, we're going through it, and eventually it turned into just his food. We're going to eat what he eats because it's too much of a pain in the butt to make food for everybody in different ways. But that was a more advanced level that we gained down the road. But that's where it went. That's what it come to. We wound up eating his food. Cleaner food, better food. But we also learned that some of his food was terrible. If you ever had tapioca bread, it is not good. Don't. You're better off with the sprouted grains like Ezekiel stuff. From the old biblical bread recipe. Anyway, but this is where it started. There was a lot of time in the kitchen. We got a ton of books, cooking for this, cooking for that guy, how to, cooking gluten-free. That's where we started, the whole gluten-free. So that whole gluten-free kick, we were the forefront of that. And it was because people like him were increasing, unfortunately. Autism odds are going way up, especially for boys. Anyway, so food became the big focus. And one of these days I'll tell you how I afforded all that. Let's just say I was working 2 jobs. I definitely had more than one income at this point. I had no choice. And that's going to be a story told because it is incredible. In that story, I truly met Jesus. And there's no question about that. I met him. And, oh boy, every day's better since then. And I'm not like a big old Christian kind of guy, but I met Jesus for sure. And Christ-like values, couldn't they be overstated or overplayed? No. So, okay, so dialing it right back to the food, right back to the cost, right back to the issue at hand, we were now feeling like we can do this. We can cook, we can watch him, we can spend time with him, and we can find ways. And there was a few things that he did like to do. And I like to ride my bicycle. I have at least 30,000 miles in the saddle. So I really like it. Got 8 right now. They're over there. Anyway, I say that because, I found a tricycle. And I throw him in the basket in the back, and we'd ride around. And for that, he would sit still. And he would hang out and enjoy himself. So we would bring snacks in like backpacks, like normal people. And then we would take a ride to the park. Living the dream. And there would be blankets at the park we would sit on, and we'd have little picnics. These things happen. What used to be rocking and humming in a corner, throwing and hurting himself You know, he was still self-injuring. I'm not telling you he ain't doing that. I'm telling you there was reprieve. There were times when it worked. It worked. We got out, got to be people together. And I think it was the 5th year we did go to a restaurant. We went to Chevy's and we sat and ate. And we took a beautiful photo of the boys happy together in the booth. It was through the pursuit of nutrition and the health recovery of his gut that is when he was able to become a more healthy person. I'll be most pleased to introduce some of his teachers that knew him when he was going through this, because we communicated with his education community, hey, we're doing chelation, because they're used to administering, helping administer medicines and things like that, for the kids, or at least being aware of what treatment they need. And we would tell them, look, we're going down this path, and these are the things that we are going to expect, meaning he's going to act this way, and we know it's our fault, but this is why, this is the prognosis, this is what we can expect in a while. Mess now, better later. Let's roll these dice. So Debbie Laris was his teacher at the time, and now I'm going to get a little ahead of myself, or ahead of the time frame, but I think I like jumping around because I like to remind myself that at around 7 years old, 7, 8 years old, a lot of kids on the spectrum begin to cognitively plateau. That's where we begin to meet the ceiling. My boy was going the opposite direction. He was going up. His cognitive ability, his engagement, everything was getting better. And I tell you, that's what gave birth to the 3 magic words in my home. Please, abracadabra, and better. This had no silver bullet. Not one thing was going to do it. Better will do. So we're always going for better. So again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but it's a pretty wonderful thing to look at, that once we got traction and hope and thinking that there is something we can do rather than just accept a life sentence of somebody who's going to basically be very difficult for the rest of our lives. As soon as we got traction on that, like I said, we went to the park, went to the restaurants after about 18 months of working with the boy on this level. But again, it mattered because he saw us making the food. He was part of it. And he didn't want to eat it. Like, after a while, we're like giving him like salads, and, not just salad, but I mean, things he didn't want to eat. And we made pizzas, and we found ways. I mean, we found stuff that he liked, but rice noodles instead of wheat noodles. Okay, so things like this. I mean, there were products that we could get him, blah 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 blah. But he'd like to take a bite and then push it right out with his tongue. Unacceptable. First of all, I spent like $12 just on your friggin' plate. Not to mention the half hour it took to make it right. And the fact that this is medicine to you. Once again, you eat your food as medicine, or you have your medicine as food. So his food is medicine. And buddy, you're going to take your medicine. So I exaggerate nothing. Everything he ever ate for a year and a half came with these 2 fingers. I mean, he was not getting that, we're not pushing a morsel out. And if he did, he knew it was going right back in. And that was that way at the dinner table for a while. Every meal. Backed up with these 2 fingers, I would hold his cheeks. It looked like abuse. It looked like I'm a horrible monster of a father. Just, you eat your food! Eat it! And he'd be biting my fingers. So what? He already shredded me, taking me to pieces, waking me up all night, every night, doing whatever he pleases at any time. Not that he'd like it. Still my problem. So you're going to eat this with my fingers in your mouth. And that's exactly what he learned to do. He learned to chew with my fingers in his mouth. I knew when to back out, but it never came out of his mouth. Keeping his lips up. Wow, I'll jam it down your throat. Choke you, Heimlich you, no problem. And done that for my other boy, no problem. Yeah, that way all the time. And it was kind of fun too, because nowadays, even now, like 15 years later, I walk in a room and he's got a bowl of food or a snack. He's like, oh shit, I'm eating dead. I mean, even now. So yeah, he's traumatized by that. I held his mouth, his head up. I mean, I manhandled a child to feed him what he's supposed to eat. And it was ugly. It's terrible to see. And my eldest son be like, I'm eating my food, Dad, see? Yeah, Daddy mean business. I mean, it was terrible. It looked ugly. Every bite, all the time, everything. And no more of this mess he was trying to eat. Only you getting the fresh food, the proper food, the things that the nutritionist said, and the things that we're eating now too. We figured it out, getting into his world. I mean, who can blame him for like, why are you eating that and I'm eating this? You know, I want to eat what you're eating. You know, who wouldn't blame him for that? You know, come on. You know. So it's like we eventually adopted his food, and that was expensive and cumbersome, and blah, blah, but that was the path. That's what worked. That's what we did. Kept doing it. Yep. So that's how it got started. It got started in the kitchen, and frankly, that was the beginning of gluten-free cooking. GF, gluten-free and easy. Ain't nothing easy about it. And this is just the beginning of the nutritional kind of thing and the impact. Because while we were doing what we were doing for him through the supplements, through the chelation, we used like alpha lipoic acid, which is able to go through the blood-brain barrier and latch onto stuff and get it out of there. You know, and when it gets out of there, it's also in the blood system, so that's going to make him crazy and nuts. Man, what a dizzying time! It coming at you from all angles. Ooh, rockets and needles, knives, and no sleep. Bed and nails when you're sleeping. Sleeping one eye open every time just because you know something's going to happen. We'll get into those little weedy details before. Maybe I need to format these things where I have little subsections because, boy, these details are tough. But anyway, the triumphs really began there because now we could start operating as a family. We knew that there was recovery. I mean, this was like being hit by a bus. There's no cure for being hit by a bus, but there's recovery. And we were having it. This was starting to happen at around 5-6 years old. It was beginning. And God bless, because it didn't notice it. We just knew that we were doing anything that made sense. And this made sense. You know, I think I spent, $700 to $800, about $1,000 total on everything, the tests and everything from Susan Blanc and kitchen table remedies. But worth every penny. Now, nowadays, like I say, we adopted his, diet, and we're all better off, way better off. Just leave it at that. I mean, I'll get all judgy and snobby. Yeah, I'm pretty open-minded about a lot of things, and I'm cool about a lot of things. You want to see me get real uptight and snobby real quick? Watch me put food in my mouth. You'll see me get awful snobby real quick. And I'll tell you why if you want to know. And then you'll be like, oh, what am I doing to myself? So it's a conversation I only have with, some people. Anyway, just wanted to add this little bit to the episodes that I've made today because, it just feels good to talk about these things, first of all, and to say that we have accomplished great things against tremendous odds. And, oh, boy, did we beat the odds. But I really want to share these things because, the beginning of the food shopping, the beginning of the being at the table, was also the beginning of getting out to the park, which got us to a restaurant, which got this family operating with some level of normalcy, even though he's still flapping and going absolutely bonker-donkers, and you got to watch him close. We are looking back. looking back, it's clear to see, hey, things were getting better. We're doing okay. At the time, we're like, we're leaning in the right direction while the wind is blowing against us. Let's keep trying. But truly, persistence and love prevailed. And I'm not saying the game is over yet. I'm saying, you can count on this having a beautiful, happy ending. And I'm going to leave a little bait. I think on the next episode, I'm going to really want to talk about the social impact about rolling around with this guy. Because this guy pulled off some of the most, I call it social moida. This guy has pulled off some shenanigans and just actions that nobody else would ever get away with. And somehow his community and the people around not just understand, they celebrate it. I mean, I will tell a story soon about how he hot rodded a lady in a wheelchair. I mean, he hot rodded her like everybody dreams. All right, so social moid is coming, but I wanted to give you a little look at the traction, because that's what we talked about in the last episode. It's like what it meant to get some, and this is what it looked like to get it. So I'm proud to share these things with you. Love and cheers.